All right guys, it's been a long time since I've done an actual case review, like a standalone case review. Now I'll be honest, I don't do it as good as Hardware Canucks. Those guys are the case review kings of YouTube, but I'm gonna do it my way. And you guys have been asking me to do like case reviews again. So I figured we'd kick that off here with the new-ish Meshify S2 from Fractal Design. This came out last month, technically. Better late than never. So we're gonna go ahead and open this up, see what it's all about, see what kind of components you can fit in here, what's different, and all of that junk. So you want to get a degree in technology, but you don't know where to start? Well, Full Sail University offers bachelor's and master's degrees that are not only accredited, but are also hands-on, so you can familiarize yourself with the same tools and technologies used by industry professionals. With degrees such as mobile development, cloud technologies, and simulation and visualization, there are a variety of degree programs offered to help you build a very specific skill set. Campus classrooms are professional environments that reflect the studios, boardrooms, and workspaces used within the industry. We all know the technology industry changes quickly, and Full Sail's programs are designed to flex as new methods and applications unfold. Each degree is designed to prepare you for a specific role in the industry. To learn more about Full Sail's programs and potential scholarship opportunities, head to fullsail.edu. All right, so Fractal Design, they're kind of like the king of black squares, I guess, if you will, if that makes sense. Let me explain. Fractal Design has a very specific aesthetic that they've always kind of been known for, and they haven't really deviated from that. So as they come out with new cases, there's been a lot of scrutiny from both public and other reviewers about it just being an iteration of the same box that's always existed. And I guess depending on your perspective, I forgot about how shocky. There's actually an old video of me showing how bad you could. Oh, right there.
Oh, it arced like all the way back here.
But as I was saying before I was rudely interrupted by static electricity, is that depending on your perspective and very subjective opinion, obviously, in terms of aesthetics, that could be a good thing or a bad thing. I think what happens sometimes is companies really establish themselves and they kind of create this sort of a safety net that they like to stay within. They don't like to venture too far out from that, which then means every time they come out with a new case, some people might just kind of like collectively groan, like, oh, it's just kind of more of the same. But at least Fractal, in my opinion, is making very good efforts in making it different enough to feel like a different chassis, although it could be based on very similar designs that already exist. In this case with the Meshify S2, in terms of dimensions and what you can fit in it and all of that, it's very, very similar to an R6. Now, obviously this is a Meshify and it's the biggest Meshify they've made. The Meshify C, which was actually very popular, and I have one down here. So this is the original Meshify. This is the Meshify S2. As you can see, the height, nearly identical. The width, pretty much the same. But if you look at the overall dimensions, you can definitely fit a lot more. Where the Meshify C sort of, and I believe C just stands for compact, to be honest. I could be wrong, but that's what I kind of have always, in my head, remembered, like, okay, C, compact, smaller, mid-tower. Still a mid-tower, but obviously deeper, because on this, you were really limited to the amount of graphics card you could put here in terms of length. With a lot of new graphics cards on the market, for instance, this is a RTX 280. You could see,
280?
2080, 280, whatever. Does anyone really care? So I mean, if you look at the overall length of it, you can see, I mean, that's pretty massive, and that would take up a lot of space on the front, meaning you couldn't put in, you know, radiators on the front and stuff, which you can, obviously, in the Meshify if you want to. So that's why this is kind of like one that they just sort of with, and this is what you get. In terms of connectivity, pre-installed as a USB Type-C, headphone, microphone jack, reset button, power button, and 2 USB 3.0. So that's already kind of an improvement over when the R6 launched, because the USB Type-C panel was an add-on, or you had to buy the Type-C version. So this is kind of nice. So the tempered glass side panel is connected to a metal frame. It's not just the glass with its own nubs that are like kind of glued to it. You've got these little kind of ball nipples. It's fun to say ball nipple. Anyway, that just sort of clips in right here. You also do have 2 thumb screws on it, so you can secure it if you want to. You technically don't need to. That's just on there for transportation, but once that pops in, I mean, that's not really going anywhere. But for peace of mind, you can screw it down. So in terms of the insides here, it's all black internals, which I think looks fantastic. You've got the wall back here that you can mount reservoirs to. Black fan on the back, that's a 140 millimeter. 2, these 140s on the front. Yes, 2 140s on the front. So you got 3 fans that are included. This little plate right here removes so that you can actually install a long 360 rad on the front or a 420. But what I like here is the fact that we have black fans with the white case. Because what kind of happens with like the R6 and stuff is it's also a white interior, white exterior, white interior with white fans, but I love this Stormtrooper look. On the top, you still have the single Moji vent that pops up, very similar to the R6, but as you can see, it's all mesh. So rather than being a solid panel on the top, you have a mesh panel that allows a lot of airflow with a filter built into that, so you can wash this filter out. It's all one piece, let it dry, stick it back in there. Very similar to the R6, this top panel comes off. In fact, it is the exact same piece as the R6, if I'm not mistaken. So you can mount your fans and your radiator to this, and then drop this in as a whole, making it a lot easier to work on. Or you can take this out while you're installing your motherboard and your fan headers and your power pins and for your EPS power, making it obviously a lot easier to get to work on. And then on the back of the case, as you can see right here, very standard now for Fractal, you get the fan controller, which plugs into a PWM control. So you could plug this into like your CPU PWM header, control all these fans off of one of it, or one fan header. You've got 3 PWM controlled fans, and then you've got 6 DC controlled fans. So very expandable without having to worry about whether or not you have enough headers on your motherboard. Now, rather than having a button on the front, I like intelligent fans. I like to be able to speed them up and slow them down with software and load and other things, so you can have silent and optimized in terms of performance. So instead of having a physical switch, which Fractal has had in the past, where you have like a low, medium, high, you just use a PWM on your motherboard. And then once again, you have your 3.5 inch drive bays back here, which you can install either full-size hard drives or SSDs or any 2.5 inch device. So whether it be hard drive, SSD, or something like an NZXT Hue, fan controller, additional USB 3.0, whatever, if it's a 2.5 inch or a 3.5 inch, you can mount it to that. 2 more SSDs that mount right here, but you can also relocate these to the front right here. So again, very standard Fractal Design designs. There's no pun there. Fractal design and modularity. Now the other nice thing about Fractal cases is they have wire management sort of built in, and rather than just having little plastic clip downs, which they used to have in the past, actually a little clip that like would close, now you have these Velcro straps, plenty of pass-through grommets. You obviously have some pass-throughs right here. They're optimally placed so that they line up with where you'd want them to be, like 24 pin, USB 3.0, SATA connectors. Right here would be for your front panel, USB and stuff like that. Plenty of room down here for a long power supply, an area to hide your cables away. And there's not really a whole lot to talk about in terms of wire management, other than it's built in and it's not an afterthought like some cases. Now, one of the things that's kind of nice about the latest round of Fractal cases, and by latest round, I mean within the last 2 years or so, is their support for EATX. It's not gonna fit this guy. That's just not fair. So, I mean, it does support EATX, not what the fuck TX like this one is right here. But as you can see, it comfortably fits EATX without covering up all of the grommets and stuff. I mean, it's still gonna be snuggish. You can see the grommets still are accessible, but it would probably be smart to route your wires through here first and then put your motherboard in, because of the fact that it is going to interfere in there slightly, but it's lined up there. So you can get the cables through here, but you would have never fit this in like the R5. You can see you can also fit your extra long graphics cards like this Strix 2080 right here, and still have plenty of room for front fans, radiator, and even a reservoir mounted right here. If you've ever water cooled in a Define S2, then you'll know that water cooling is definitely one of the main design elements there. Now also too, I forgot to mention, the top piece, as you can see, the radiator is not centered on that. And the reason for that, and this is something that I've had for a long time in their case design, but I still get people asking me on a regular basis about water cooling, is because it's offset, and it's offset away from the motherboard. It means that once this panel is inside here, you can see that it pushes the radiator away from the motherboard so it won't interfere with heat sinks and stuff, which is typically what happens because the heat sinks get taller on motherboards as VRM and overclocking gets improved. Those sit taller, which means interference with radiators are mounted up top. But when it's offset like this, it gives you a much better chance of it not interfering. So basically at the end of the day, what you have right here is a very Meshify inspired and high airflow inspired Define S2. Now I know that that's the last thing Fractal wants, is a case of theirs to be compared to another case. But in my opinion, this is something that the audience has been asking for. I've seen lots of people asking for a larger Meshify C. The Meshify C was a hugely popular case from Fractal Design. So giving you a larger chassis like this to fit more water cooling in at a price point that I think is still fairly aggressive in the terms of being price to feature set, makes it an obvious choice if you're thinking about doing water cooling and want a nice clean aesthetic. Now, whether or not you care about the angles like this, because depending on how you look at it, it almost looks like it's bent or dented. But it's also a very abstract design, which kind of breaks up some of the monotony of the 90-degree angles everywhere. Because Fractal, like I said, has not deviated from the rectangle shape very much over the years. They've gotten a little bit more aggressive with some of the angles, but now you've got tempered glass side panels, water cooling friendly, EATX friendly, airflow friendly, because all mesh front, all mesh top. Speaking of airflow, you also have an entirely open bottom of the chassis. So you can even put a radiator down there if you wanted and have it being an updraft through the case. If you didn't need a very big power supply, or you go with one of the shorter, like, 1,000-watt power supplies. So anyway, this is where you guys basically sound off on how you feel about a case like this. I have not done a case review in quite a long time. And whereas this is a little bit more of an overview, because until you start building in a chassis, you can't really determine where its shortcomings are. I don't necessarily need to build in this one to determine that, because like I said, internally, it's very, very similar to the S2, the Define S2 and the R6, which I've already built custom hard tube bends in there. I'll put a link in the description below to a couple of different builds that we've done in those chassis over the last year and a half or so you can sort of get an idea of what it looks like too when it's done. So I might do a custom build in this. We'll just have to see though. I don't have any need to build another system at the moment. I've got several builds going on. I don't want to over inundate myself with projects and then you guys complain that they don't get done or they're taking too long or they're multi-parters. So you guys sound off below on what you want to see. I love Stormtrooper looks, and I think that Fractal's really nailed it with this one. If you want a water cooling friendly, airflow friendly, larger chassis that still doesn't take up a lot of room on your desk and isn't a massive like super tower, then this is probably worth looking at. All right guys, thanks for watching. Tell us what you think about this case. And more importantly, Fractal, tell them what you think about this case because they'll probably be looking at the comments. All right guys, we'll see you in the next one. Campus clap. Sounds like a dolly.
Yeah.
It's happening! I knew this day was gonna come. I knew they were gonna break in here, I just didn't know how. There's a random guy I seriously want to open this on camera and be like, sup? I would love there to be a little random body like, doot, 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 doot. So you wanted to get it, so you get the familiar side. There are varieties. I haven't had breakfast yet. Look at me, I'm wasting away to nothing. There are a variety of campus classrooms. Meet me in the classroom. My man boobs are from almost an A cup from a B cup. And simulation. And simulation. So you can, and they're optimally EEB for extra big
Visual, like, yeah.
Visual simulation and simulation.